Coming live from the Tivoli Met Radio studio here on Auraria campus, this is All Sports with Gerardo. Thank you for listening to All Sports through Met Radio on mymetmedia.com, live every Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is your host Gerardo, and all I talk is sports. On the show today, I am going to talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, and NHL hockey. Before I start the show, I hope you all had a great week. To start off, starting this week and going forward, All Sports with Gerardo will now be on Tuesdays from 3:30 to 5 p.m. every Tuesday. So All Sports with Gerardo used to be every Thursday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Now it's going to be every Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. every Tuesday starting this week and going forward. And you can also still listen to All Sports with Gerardo through Met Radio on mymetmedia.com/listen. That is the way to listen to All Sports with Gerardo when it's live. And you can also view my content and all my shows from now in the past that I have posted on my social media pages at All Sports with Gerardo on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of my current shows and content is on my YouTube and Facebook page. So make sure to follow All Sports with Gerardo on social media if you haven't yet. Moving on now to Major League Baseball. Hunter Pence and the Giants have agreed to a one-year contract. Andrew Benintendi and the Red Sox have agreed to a 2-year contract. Nick Ahmed and the Diamondbacks have agreed to a 4-year contract extension. After playing 13 seasons, Kendrys Morales announced he is retiring from Major League Baseball. The Red Sox hired Ron Nukinik to be their interim manager. So right now, Ron Nukinik will be the Red Sox manager, and he is also the interim manager. And we're going to have to wait and see down the road if the Red Sox hire a manager that will take over, whether it's within their organization or outside of the organization, or we're going to have to wait and see if Ron Nukinik will just be the manager instead of the interim manager. But right now, the Red Sox do have a manager that will currently be the interim manager until they find a manager without the interim manager title, and it will just be their manager. So we're going to have to wait and see when the Red Sox get their manager. The beginning of the 2020 baseball season is just around the corner. This week, pitchers and catchers report to spring training. Next week, the position players report to spring training. Towards the end of February, spring training games will begin, and towards the end of March, the 2020 regular season will begin with opening day. The teams to keep an eye on in the 2020 season includes the Yankees, Red Sox, Rays, White Sox, Indians, Twins, Astros, Angels, Athletics, Braves, Mets, Phillies, Nationals, Cubs, Reds, Brewers, Cardinals, Diamondbacks, Rockies, and the Dodgers. So my favorite time of year is just around the corner. And now that it's February, the 2020 Major League Baseball season is getting closer and closer, and the end of the off season is just around the corner. It's my favorite time of year now. The 2020 Major League Baseball season is getting ready to begin, and the regular season is just around the corner. The summertime's always my favorite time of year, especially that baseball's playing. This week, pitchers and catchers are reporting to spring training for all 30 Major League Baseball teams, and next week, all the position players and the rest of the baseball teams will report to spring training for all 30 Major League Baseball teams. Also, my other favorite time of year is just around the corner too. Now that it's February, next month is March, and it'll finally be spring, Spring break is also in March. Springtime's coming up. We got spring training baseball coming up, and it's just around the corner. And then as we're going into spring, the regular season begins. And then as we go into the summer months, we finally got the regular season, we got the summer months, and we got baseball. It doesn't get any better than that. So definitely, baseball is my favorite sport. The summertime is my favorite time of year. We got those hot summer days, and we got baseball. It doesn't get any better than that. And there's no doubt that the summertime, especially of baseball playing, is my favorite time of year. So I can't wait for the 2020 baseball season to begin, and it's just around the corner now that we're approaching the end of the off season. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NFL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NFL football. The Chargers made it official that they are moving on from Phillip Rivers this offseason, and he will not return to the team for the 2020 season. Phillip Rivers played 16 seasons with the Chargers, and he is going to become a free agent this offseason. For the Chargers, Phillip Rivers is the franchise leader in wins, pass completage, passing attempts, completage percentage, passing yards, and passing touchdowns. So if we take a look at the Chargers in 2020 and going forward, the Chargers is definitely going to look different without Phillip Rivers at the quarterback position, especially the AFC West. For all these years, I can remember the Broncos going against the Chargers down in San Diego, now in Los Angeles, and here in Denver. And it was always the Broncos against Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. The Broncos-Chargers matchups, which was a divisional rival here in the AFC West, those Broncos-Chargers divisional matchups, they were some of the best games that I have watched. And they're some of the best games that the Broncos have played in. Those Broncos-Chargers games were great games, whether they were on the road or here at home. But the games that I'm going to remember were those games down at Qualcomm Stadium, down in San Diego, when the Broncos went against Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. Those were some of the best games that the Broncos have played in, especially since I've watched the Broncos. But it's definitely going to look different in the AFC West, whether it's the Broncos, the Raiders, or the Chiefs going against the Chargers, because they will not be going against Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. The Chargers roster is going to look different without Phillip Rivers being at the quarterback position. There's no doubt that Phillip Rivers is one of the best players to ever play for the Chargers, and he was also one of the best quarterbacks to play for the Chargers. Phillip Rivers also has many franchise records within the Chargers organization because of how many years he played for the Chargers at the quarterback position. So this offseason, the Chargers decided they are moving on from Phillip Rivers. Now that the Chargers relocated from San Diego up to Los Angeles, and they are getting their new stadium that they're going to share with the Rams in Inglewood, California, SoFi Stadium. The Chargers want to start a new chapter of Chargers football. Now that they're in Los Angeles, they're getting a new stadium. They're going to play at SoFi Stadium. So in 2020, the Chargers roster is definitely going to look different, and they're definitely going to have a new quarterback playing for the Chargers. And we're going to have to wait and see who plays at that quarterback position For the Chargers, it's very likely that the Chargers are going to draft a quarterback in the 2020 NFL Draft. We're going to have to wait and see who it is. The starting quarterback for the Chargers will likely be a quarterback that they drafted in the NFL Draft. Also, we're going to have to wait and see if the Chargers are going to go after any quarterbacks during free agency, but it's likely going to be a quarterback that they draft. The 2020 Chargers want to have a better season compared to the last few seasons that they had. Now that they're starting a new chapter of Chargers football in Los Angeles and at their new stadium, SoFi Stadium, the Chargers want to be great this season and going into the future. So we're going to have to wait and see who plays at that quarterback position for the Chargers. Also, this isn't the end of Phillip Rivers. After Phillip Rivers moved his family from California to Florida, Phillip Rivers says that he still has a lot left in the tank and that he can still play in the NFL. This offseason, there's definitely going to be a lot of quarterbacks that have the potential to be free agents. Phillip Rivers will be one of those quarterbacks, and we're going to have to wait and see what other quarterbacks will become free agents. And there will definitely be a few teams that will be in need of a quarterback, whether it's a veteran quarterback or they get a quarterback in the 2020 NFL Draft. But there's definitely a few teams that will be in need of a quarterback. And since Phillip Rivers relocated his family to Florida, it's very likely that a team out east that is in need of a quarterback will reach out to Phillip Rivers. So I would expect Phillip Rivers to either play for the Buccaneers since he lives in Florida, the Panthers, or the Colts. But it's very likely Phillip Rivers is going to play for a team that's out east since he currently lives down in Florida. But after Phillip Rivers relocated his family from California to Florida, that was kind of the hint that Phillip Rivers' time with the Chargers has come to an end. Just a few weeks after Phillip Rivers relocated his family to Florida, the Chargers announced that they had mutually agreed to part ways with Phillip Rivers and that they were moving on from Phillip Rivers. And even in the last game of the regular season for the Chargers, when Phillip Rivers had his press conference, you could kind of tell by the way he was talking that he knew his time with the Chargers was coming to an end. So we're going to have to wait and see what team Phillip Rivers plays for in 2020 and going forward. Even though Phillip Rivers is not in his prime and he's getting into his later years of his career, Phillip Rivers says he still has a lot left in the tank, and this isn't the end of him. So we're going to have to wait and see what team Phillip Rivers is playing for in 2020 and going forward. Safety Chuck Clark and the Ravens have agreed to a one-year contract. After playing 8 seasons, Garrett Clurick announced he is retiring from the NFL. Jennifer King has been hired by the Redskins as a full-year coaching intern. Jennifer King will be the first African-American female full-year intern in the NFL. So we're going to have to wait and see going into the future. But we may see a woman coaching an NFL team going into the future. Also, we may also see women coaching teams. No matter if it's the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, or whatever sport it is. But going into the future, we'll see women coaching a team, whether they're the head coach or they're a coach on the roster for that team. But we will see women coaching teams, no matter what league it is. But going into the future, women will be coaching teams in sports. So we're going to have to wait and see when that happens. But it's definitely going to happen going into the future. For the 2019 season, the two players that had a breakout season for the Broncos this season were Justin Simmons and Alexander Johnson. Justin Simmons and Alexander Johnson had underrated seasons, and both players should have made the Pro Bowl. Justin Simmons was named to the second All-Pro team, and he was ranked 17th on PFF out of 101 players. Alexander Johnson ranked 46th on PFF out of 101 players. Courtland Sutton ranked 69th on PFF out of 101 players. So it's great to see that 3 Broncos players were ranked on the PFF out of 101 players. That included Justin Simmons, Alexander Johnson, and Courtland Sutton. With the type of seasons that Justin Simmons, Alexander Johnson, and Courtland Sutton had throughout the 2019 season for the Broncos, there's no doubt that these 3 individual players were some of the best players on the Broncos roster this season. And we can't wait to see what they do next season and going into the future for the Broncos. And this is only the beginning of their career. And they're young, talented players. And the Broncos definitely have some great players on the Broncos roster right now. And the Broncos definitely want to improve their young, talented roster this offseason through free agency and the NFL draft. So we're going to have to wait and see what players the Broncos acquire this offseason through free agency or the NFL draft. But after the type of seasons that the Broncos have had for the last few seasons, the Broncos definitely want to be better for the 2020 season and going into the future. And the Broncos, they want to make the playoffs in 2020 and going into the future. And they also want to get back to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl again. So this is only the beginning for the Broncos. And we're going to have to wait and see how they improve the team this offseason for the 2020 season and going into the future. But they have a young, talented roster. And they're tired of losing and having losing seasons and not making it into the playoffs. And the Broncos, they want to get back to the playoffs. They want to appear in the Super Bowl. They want to win the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, the Broncos want to have winning seasons. They want to play better football. And they want to win games and be a better team. So we're going to have to wait and see how the Broncos play in 2020 and going into the future. But it's all going to start with their young, talented roster that they have right now, which includes Justin Simmons, Alexander Johnson, and Courtland Sutton. With Justin Simmons, after the type of season that he had in the 2019 season for the Broncos, there's no doubt that he's going to be a great safety for the Broncos and in the NFL going into the future. And it's unfortunate that Justin Simmons didn't make it to the Pro Bowl with the type of season that he had with the Broncos. And with Justin Simmons being in his contract year, we're going to have to wait and see if the Broncos re-sign Justin Simmons to a new contract. But it's very likely that the Broncos are going to franchise tag Justin Simmons for this season to see what he does and how he plays in 2020. And after examining the 2020 season and how he played in 2019, then the Broncos will determine what type of contract he will get with the Broncos. So we're going to have to wait and see if the Broncos re-sign Justin Simmons to a new contract, but it's very likely he is going to be on the roster for the 2020 season, but he will be a franchise tag because the Broncos will want to see what he does and how he plays in the 2020 season, and they want to examine how he played in the 2019 season and how he will possibly play in the 2020 season, and they'll go from there in the type of contract they will offer Justin Simmons. Alexander Johnson had a great season. He was definitely one of the best players on the Broncos defense, and he was also a surprise player on the Broncos roster. With the type of season that Alexander Johnson had for the Broncos, he should have made it into the Pro Bowl for being one of the best linebackers in the NFL with the type of numbers he had in the 2019 season. But this is only the beginning of Alexander Johnson, and he has a lot of potential for the Broncos and in the NFL going into the future. So I'm definitely looking forward to Alexander Johnson and what he can do in the 2020 season for the Broncos and going into the future after the type of season that he had in the 2019 season. And he was definitely a surprise player for the Broncos. Courtland Sutton, with the type of season that he had in 2019 and even as a rookie the previous season, Courtland Sutton is going to be a great player for the Broncos, especially on that Broncos offense. And the Broncos, they need a number one wide receiver. Courtland Sutton, he's definitely going to be the Broncos' number one wide receiver next season and going into the future. After the type of season that he had in 2019 and even as a rookie, Courtland Sutton is going to be the Broncos' number one wide receiver in 2020 and going into the future. And Courtland Sutton is definitely going to be the replacement for Demaryius Thomas. After Demaryius Thomas was the Broncos' number one wide receiver, Courtland Sutton is going to be the number one wide receiver for the Broncos in 2020 and going into the future. And for their quarterback, Drew Lock, after the Broncos found their quarterback, Drew Lock, as potentially being their franchise quarterback and their quarterback of the future in 2020 and going into the future, Drew Lock needs a number one wide receiver for 2020 and going forward, and Courtland Sutton is definitely going to be his number one wide receiver. So after the Broncos found Drew Lock to be their starting quarterback in 2020 and going into the future, and the Broncos got their number one wide receiver for Drew Lock, the Broncos offense is going to be great. And they have a lot of potential in 2020 and going into the future, since they have Drew Lock at the quarterback position, they have Courtland Sutton at the wide receiver position, they got Noah Fant at the tight end position, and they got Phillip Lindsay at the running back position. That's only to name a few players on the Broncos offense that are young and talented. And this Broncos offense has a lot of potential going into the future with their young, talented players. And they're going to be a young, talented offense going into the future. But now, the Broncos need to find their number two wide receiver to replace Emmanuel Sanders after Emmanuel Sanders got traded to the 49ers during the middle of the 2019 season. So this offseason, the Broncos are going to look for their number two wide receiver through free agency and through the 2020 NFL Draft. But with the Broncos having the number 15 overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, it's very likely the Broncos are going to draft their number two wide receiver with the 15 overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. And the Broncos like what they're seeing as prospects in the 2020 NFL Draft, especially in the first round of the NFL Draft. And by time it's the Broncos' turn to pick at that 15th pick in the NFL Draft, there will definitely be a few wide receivers available for the Broncos to select. And in the first round of the 2020 NFL Draft, there will definitely be a few young, talented wide receivers in this year's NFL Draft. And it's very likely that the Broncos will draft one of those young, talented wide receivers, because the Broncos need to find their number 2 wide receiver, whether it's through the NFL Draft or through free agency. They need to find a wide receiver that can replace Emmanuel Sanders. The number 2 wide receiver needs to be like Emmanuel Sanders. The number 2 wide receiver needs to have the speed and the talent like Emmanuel Sanders has. And there will definitely be some wide receivers in the NFL Draft that can be like Emmanuel Sanders and be the way that Emmanuel Sanders was when he played for the Broncos. This offseason, the Broncos need to find their number 2 wide receiver, whether it's through the NFL Draft or through free agency. So we're going to have to wait and see who will be the number 2 wide receiver for the Broncos in the 2020 season and going into the future. But it's very likely going to be one of the young, talented wide receivers that will be in the 2020 NFL Draft. And there is definitely a few young, talented wide receivers in the first round of the NFL Draft that the Broncos have their eye on. So hopefully in the 2020 season for the Broncos, they will have the team they need to get back into the playoffs and have a winning season in 2020. And it's all going to start with what they do this offseason through free agency and the NFL Draft. So we're going to have to wait and see what the Broncos do this offseason. But I'm definitely looking forward to the 2020 Broncos team and what players they have on their roster. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the NBA and NHL. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to NBA basketball. The Bryant family announced that Kobe Bryant's public memorial will be on February 24th in Los Angeles at the Staples Center. The day of Kobe Bryant's memorial, 224, reflects the jersey numbers worn by Kobe and Gianna Bryant. That's why the memorial is going to be on February 24th. The memorial that will be on February 24th in Los Angeles at the Staples Center will be the time that everybody in the Lakers organization, in the NBA, in the sports world, and everybody around the world will have the opportunity to give their condolences to the Bryant family for the loss of Kobe Bryant and his daughter, Gianna Bryant. That will also be the time that everyone can honor Kobe Bryant's legacy with the Lakers and in the NBA. Also, everyone will have the opportunity to honor Kobe Bryant's life and legacy, and also honor Gianna's life and legacy. Also, some new information has been released by investigators in regards to the helicopter crash. This is an ongoing investigation, and more information will be released in the coming weeks and in the coming months. The full investigation will likely take a year after the crash has occurred, as the NTSB has to investigate the cause of the crash. But as of right now, investigators released that the cause of the helicopter crash was not a misfunction with the helicopter. It was very likely caused by the weather, since it was a foggy day up in the hills outside of Los Angeles, in the Calabasas area where the helicopter crashed. So the cause of this helicopter crash was likely by the weather and the foggy conditions the morning of January 26th. And we're going to have to wait and see in the next few weeks, in the next few months, what new information gets released in the cause of the helicopter crash, as this is an ongoing investigation now and going into the future. Kobe Bryant's memorial will be on February 24th in Los Angeles at the Staples Center. That will be the opportunity that the entire world can honor Kobe Bryant's life and legacy, and the legacy that he left with the Lakers and in the NBA. So everyone around the world will have the opportunity to go to Los Angeles and honor Kobe Bryant's life on February 24th at the Staples Center. Whether they knew or they didn't know Kobe Bryant, everyone will be able to honor Kobe Bryant's life and legacy that he left on this planet. That will also be the opportunity that everybody can honor Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna Bryant on the life they left behind here on this planet. It will also be another opportunity for everyone to give their condolences in the loss to Kobe Bryant and Gianna Bryant to the Bryant family. And we're going to have to wait and see who attends this memorial at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. But it's very likely that many people will attend this memorial. Everyone that is putting this memorial together is expecting a huge turnout, especially for the amount of people that knew Kobe Bryant. People that were a part of the Lakers organization, current and former players, coaches, and personnel, current and former players and coaches in the NBA, and people that knew Kobe Bryant in the sports world or as a person. So we're going to have to wait and see how many people attend this memorial for Kobe Bryant, but they're expecting a huge turnout with the amount of people that knew Kobe Bryant. And they're expecting people from the Lakers organization, the NBA, the sports world, the Bryant family, and everybody else that knew Kobe Bryant to attend this memorial. It will also be an opportunity for fans of the Lakers, fans of the NBA, fans of sports, even people that are not into sports, but they honored Kobe Bryant's legacy that he had with the Lakers and in the NBA. February 24th will be the opportunity for everyone around the world to go to Los Angeles and go to the Staples Center to honor Kobe Bryant's legacy and the life that he left behind on this planet, and the legacy that he had with the Lakers and in the NBA. Russell Westbrook became the 46th player in NBA history with 20,000 plus career points. Russell Westbrook moved into 14th in all-time assists. LeBron James moved into 15th in all-time three-pointers made. LeBron James moved into 5th in all-time free throws made. Damian Lillard moved into 10th in all-time 50-point games. John Stockton, Chris Paul, and LeBron James are the only players with 18,000 points, 9,000 assists, and 2,000 steals. Russell Westbrook joins LeBron James and Oscar Robertson as the only players to record 20,000 points, 7,000 assists, and 6,000 rebounds during their NBA career. The NBA Skills Challenge is on Saturday, February 15 up in Chicago. The NBA Skills Challenge participants includes Bam Oladipo, Patrick Beverley, Spencer Dinwiddie, Chris Middleton, Derrick Rose, Domantas Sabonis, Pascal Siakam, and Jason Tatum. The NBA three-point contest is on Saturday, February 15 up in Chicago. The NBA three-point contest participants includes Davis Bertans, Devontae Graham, Joe Harris, Buddy Hield, Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, Duncan Robinson, and Trae Young. The NBA dunk contest is on Saturday, February 15 up in Chicago. The NBA dunk contest participants includes Dwight Howard, Derrick Jones Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Pat Connaughton. The NBA All-Star Game between Team LeBron and Team Giannis is on Sunday, February 16 up in Chicago. For the All-Star Game, LeBron and Giannis were named the captains. Luka Doncic became the youngest All-Star starter since LeBron James back in 2005. LeBron James has more All-Star appearances than all East starters combined. LeBron James' 16th All-Star Game start breaks a tie with Kobe Bryant for the most starts in NBA history. Nikola Jokic was named an All-Star, and he will represent the Nuggets and Team LeBron in the All-Star Game. Nikola Jokic is now a two-time All-Star. For Team LeBron, the starters are LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Luka Doncic, and James Harden. The reserves are Damian Lillard, Ben Simmons, Nikola Jokic, Jason Tatum, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, and Domantas Sabonis. For Team Giannis, the starters are Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Pascal Siakam, Kemba Walker, and Trae Young. The reserves are Chris Middleton, Bam Obi, Rudy Gobert, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, Brandon Ingram, and Donovan Mitchell. For the All-Star Game, Team LeBron will wear number 2 jerseys, and Team Giannis will wear number 24 jerseys to honor Kobe and Gianna. Each All-Star jersey will have a patch to honor the 9 victims that died in the helicopter crash on January 26. The NBA announced they changed the All-Star Game format. The fourth quarter will not be timed, and the final score of the game will be the leading team's score after the third quarter, and 24 points will be added to their total points after 3 quarters of the game to honor Kobe Bryant. Players that didn't make the All-Star Game that should have made the All-Star Game includes Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Lou Williams, Andre Drummond, and J.A. Morant. Nikola Jokic was named Western Conference Player of the Week. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Nuggets. I'm going to tell you every team the Nuggets went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. To start off, last week the Nuggets went against the Trailblazers, and the Nuggets beat the Trailblazers 127-99. The Nuggets went against the Jazz, and the Nuggets beat the Jazz in a close game 98-95. The Nuggets went against the Suns, and the Nuggets beat the Suns 117-108. The Nuggets went against the Spurs, and the Nuggets beat the Spurs 127-120. This week, the Nuggets go against the Lakers, the Thunder, the Timberwolves, and the Pistons. So that's the current schedule for the Nuggets. That's the teams the Nuggets went up against this past week and the final scores of those games, and that's also who the Nuggets go up against in the next week. Moving on now to NHL hockey, the 2020 NHL Stadium Series between the Avalanche and the Kings is on Saturday, February 15 at the U.S. Air Force Academy down in Colorado Springs. So taking a look at the 2020 NHL Stadium Series, it's going to be a great Stadium Series between the Avalanche and the Kings down in Colorado Springs. The Stadium Series appeared here in Colorado a few years ago when the Avalanche went against the Red Wings here in Denver at Coors Field. This time around, the Stadium Series returns back to Colorado, and it's heading down to Colorado Springs. And it's going to be the Avalanche going against the Kings at the U.S. Air Force Academy down in Colorado Springs. So everyone's looking forward to the 2020 NHL Stadium Series being played at the U.S. Air Force Academy down in Colorado Springs. This is definitely going to make history since it's the first time that an NHL Stadium Series will be played at the Air Force Academy. So the NHL, the Avalanche fans, the Kings fans, myself, and the sports world is definitely looking forward to the 2020 NHL Stadium Series down at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. In the 2020 NHL Stadium Series between the Avalanche and the Kings, it should definitely be a great hockey game and another great NHL Stadium Series. So right now I'm going to update you with the current schedule for the Avalanche. I'm going to tell you every team the Avalanche went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And I'm also going to tell you who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. To start off, last Tuesday, the Avalanche went against the Sabres, and the Avalanche beat the Sabres 6-1. The Avalanche went against the Senators, and the Avalanche beat the Senators 4-1. The Avalanche went against the Blue Jackets, and the Avalanche won a close game against the Blue Jackets 2-1. And the Avalanche went against the Wild, and the Avalanche won another close game 3-2 against the Wild. This week, the Avalanche go against the Senators again here at the Pepsi Center here in Denver. The Avalanche also go against the Capitals, the Kings, in the 2020 NHL Stadium Series at the U.S. Air Force Academy down in Colorado Springs. And the Avalanche also go against the Lightning. So that's the current schedule for the Avalanche. For the teams the Avalanche went up against this past week and the final scores of those games. And that's also who the Avalanche go up against in the next week. Right now I'm going to take a commercial break. When I come back, I will talk about the end of the show. Welcome back to All Sports with Gerardo. Moving on now to end the show. What to watch for this week in sports. The NBA Skills Challenge on Saturday, February 15 up in Chicago. The NBA 3-point contest on Saturday, February 15 up in Chicago. The NBA Dunk Contest on Saturday, February 15 up in Chicago. The NBA All-Star Game between Team LeBron and Team Giannis on Sunday, February 16 up in Chicago. The Nuggets NBA Basketball, the 2020 NHL Stadium Series between the Avalanche and the Kings on Saturday, February 15 at the U.S. Air Force Academy down in Colorado Springs. The Avalanche NHL Hockey College Basketball Moving on now, on the next show, I will talk about NFL football, Major League Baseball, NBA basketball, and NHL hockey. I hope y'all have a great week and a great weekend. Tune in to the next All Sports with Gerardo show next Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. Remember, All Sports with Gerardo is now every Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. starting this week and going forward. So make sure to tune in to All Sports with Gerardo every Tuesday from 3:30 to 5 p.m. this week and going forward. I want to say thank you to everybody that listens to All Sports through Met Radio here on mymetmedia.com. Subscribe or like my pages on social media at All Sports with Gerardo. Until next time, this is Gerardo.